What's in the bag? It's what all the fitters get asked when they're in sessions. It's something that we've always been asked over the years. What do we play, and most importantly, why? So going to do a bit of a quick run through my bag, what's in it now, and what's it evolved from in a couple of instances, but just a bit of info about what's in the bag and why. So we'll start top end, driver wise. Obviously got to have the corporate head cover on. So last year I switched out to the Titleist TSR3. So I've always been a high launch, relatively high spin player. So I've always played low lofted clubs. So this is an 8 degree. And previous to that, it was a trusty old M4. Now as a club I had this for 7 years, 7 pushing 8 years. And was, because I launched the ball high, I add a little bit of lofted impact. The 8.5 degree and the M4, weight forward, slight fade bias. I've always been a hooker of a ball as a miss. The M4 was a great head, gave a lovely ball flight, and it took me an awfully long time to change. This was a club I had a huge amount of confidence with, and I wanted to change it over the years. This had the graphite design, the XC6 shaft in, so tip stable, lower launch, lower spin, but not a harsh feel, which I quite like, but ultimately just gave me consistency. And because you would hope that I'd be able to dial the numbers for the club in pretty well. So over the years, I did try to find performance gains from a change, but because the ball flight was so good and I trusted it so much, 3 or 4 yards wasn't really enough to make me warrant changing. However, last year, when this model came out, the gains were off centre. So middle strike to middle strike, we're only looking at a few yards, 3-4 yards. And because the limits have been set since 2003, so it's not like the M4 is a slow driver head. They're all up there over the last 7, 8, 9 years. Ball speed out the middle hasn't really changed. But it was the miss strikes was where I really gained. So for me, my miss tends to be just slightly low and slightly into the heel side of the face, which is quite a weak bit of the face. But if you get a deep weighted head, for me that means spin, which is where the M4 was very good. It kept the flight in a pretty good place, but I dropped a bit of ball speed. But what I found last year switching to this was that my off-centre performance really improved, maybe 10 yards or so gain. Ball speed maintained a little bit better, spin maintained a little bit better, and I gained a few yards out the middle as well. So, on average gained probably 7 or 8 yards out of this, which then made it a big enough gain to make me warrant making a change. Shaft-wise, the Sinister 65, tip balanced, tip stable, so lower spin, which provided a really powerful flight. Also quite like the bright colours as well, so it goes with lots of outfits. As you know, I wear bright colours. So that's the driver. On to the 3-wood now. Head cover wise, St George's Hill's my home club, so I like to have the head cover from St George's Hill on there. So switched again recently to the Paradigm. This was last year, Paradigm Triple Diamond. The previous club I had played, spot the theme here, the Epic Flash Sub-Zero. So this was literally just a head swap. I've played the Kyoshi Purple 75, used to be in an X, now in a stiff. Again, those few grams lighter just helped me time it a little bit better. I've played the Kyoshi Purple in my forward for a long time. 12, 13, 14 years perhaps. The softer tip gives it a really nice bit of feel, a little bit of launch, but just weight-wise, balance-wise, again, times beautifully for me. The Epic Flash Sub-Zero was a great head, but had the odd one that came out like an absolute cannon, so got to trouble that I wasn't necessarily expecting to. And similar to the driver, strike a little bit low, little heel side, which again is still my miss. Just spun up, came out a little bit dead, and I found that the Paradigm Triple Diamond just was better across the face, better on that miss, a little bit more consistent for spin and flight and distance. So really a real fine tune, but that was the sole reason for that. So made it a better fairway wood. It's always been a great teeing off club, the Epic Flash, but the Paradigm Triple Diamond is just a bit better off the ground as well. So next club down, I should put that to one side. Next club down, I've always been an iron player. So the driving iron, I used to play Blade 2 iron for years. I have a Strixon ZU65 driving iron in a 2 iron. I've always been an iron player. I've always preferred irons to certainly hybrids, and historically lofted wood spun too much for me. So 2 iron, which was a bladed 2 iron when I was playing full time, too scary for that now. But the driving iron gives me a little bit extra performance and forgiveness and ball speed from the Face Tech. The Strix on the ZU65 that I've had for a number of years now, it's a softer feel than a lot of the others. So a lot of the heads now where they're putting firmer faces, faster faces in, have a bit of a harder, clickier feel, which I don't like quite as much. And the ball speed I get off this head's great, still get a 1.5 efficiency. But for me, this is mainly a teeing off club. It's mainly about fairway finding, it's mainly about keeping it in play. There aren't many par fives I'm going at and two with the driving iron, and I do play links golf every now and then. So I like that, you know, downward, flatter ball flight, just feels a little bit more controllable. But it's always been a real go-to club for me. You know, if I want to keep a ball in play, I like to flight it down. So naturally, this is it's a better flight for my eye, and I've got enough ball speed to get enough height should I need to play it into the green. I match the shaft to my irons. I play the Oben CT 115, the soft stepped stiff, for those who want to know, in my 2-iron and all the way through the irons. A lot of players would go a little bit lighter in their driving iron, where they're generating a little bit more width. But for me, if I go lighter than this, lighter than the body of my irons, I just lose the timing and the strike. So for me, it maintains the club, maintains the shaft from the irons through the 2-iron. I have added, or it's very, very occasional usage, but I have added, underneath the Bay Hill head cover, a 5-wood. So I played the London Club November last year, and a 2-iron out of semi-rough over water in winter is not the most enjoyable club in the world. So for that kind of course, and solely for that purpose, I now have the matching 5-wood to the 3-wood. I would never have used this in the past, just my ball flight and spin rates have been too high. But the fairway woods now don't spin anywhere near as much, so the ball flight out the 5-wood is more stable and doesn't flare up quite as much. But I'll give you a little bit of an indication of why I've got this club in the bag. So if I were to take my 2-iron, and bear in mind this is based on flying it over water to a green and stopping it. So the 2-iron, ball flight wise, is more down and forwards. It's a much more penetrating, much stronger, flatter ball flight, which for off the tee is great. A little bit of run out or down on the coastline. So, you know, with this one, a little low on the face, but launching down at 10 degrees launch, 3-3 on spin. So the flight window's where I want it to be. I didn't quite strike that, but a little bit of a miss strike, and that's drop carry right off. So that's 210 carry, run out to 230. If I strike it clean, it's going to be 220, 225 carry, but it's got that lower, flatter flight. Now, that misstrike also tells you why on a par 5 with water short, that's not a club you really want to hit. Whereas the 5-wood, much, much bigger footprint to the club, much deeper weighting, which picks the flight up more. So, and this is a club of the same sort of loft. This is a 19-degree loft, that's an 18-degree loft. So we're only looking at 1 degree loft change. But the 5-wood, as you can see there, much higher launch, 15 odd degrees of launch. Struck that a little bit cleaner, so just under 4,000 spins, exactly where I want it to be. That's carried 234, but it's so much higher and softer. So if I'm playing a course like the London Club, or I go out to Florida or the States and want to play a kind of a carry-based course, that club is now in the bag. Historically, that spin would have been much higher, but that now gives me that option. And yeah, there was an experience which I don't want to repeat, which is why that's now in the bag. But will be an occasional club rather than the mainstay of my bag. The 2-iron will still be the club that's normally in the bag. So moving on to irons. So I do have a slight mix in the bag. So I dropped my 3-iron a number of years ago and then added in, I mean, these look quite experienced actually, added in the PXG, the Gen 2 311T. So this still has a little bit of tech, a little bit of you know, kind of polymer infill. So a little bit extra face tech, a little bit of extra ball speed to help me bridge the distances up to the 2-iron and keep getting the carry distance gain that I need at the top bit of the bag. But I then play from 5-iron down. I play the Miura, the MB001 blades, which I played blades since I was 14, so 30 years now. And so strike is something I'm not too worried about. I'm not looking to gain a lot of forgiveness. I enjoy that feeling of getting a strong strike and getting the feedback from that contact. Unless I'm playing a major comp, I kind of feel like I've played better golf. If I'm striking it cleanly, I'll happily give up a little bit of forgiveness for that sort of feedback. But I'm also not looking to hit the ball any higher, I like, again, a slightly flatter, lower ball flight, but I also need the spin that the blades give me. So if I go to a construction which is a little bit more, a little bit more weighted in the bottom of the head and with a faster face, I'm going to lose spin. I don't want to have to add loads of loft to get the flight, that sort of high looping ball flight. These keep launch down, keep spin up, but ball striking has never been an issue, so forgiveness isn't something I'm too worried about. And I just love playing blades. There's a bit of a ego thing in there, I think. I've played them such a long time. I know the feedback. I know that if it comes up short, it's me, and I'm willing to give up that bit of forgiveness for that feedback. And again, the Oban, the CT115s, stiff, soft stepped, all the way through from my 2-iron down to my gap wedge, which we'll come on to now. Before these, the only change was, as I have here, one cheeky little bit of paint fill that I did on the previous set of Miro blades, but I played the PXI. So as a shaft, actually really quite different. When I did a bit of technique work, I didn't need the tip balance that the PXIs have. The Obans are a much more neutrally weighted shaft. So previously I needed the heavier tip to drop it in so I could start it right and sling it. And when I did the technique work, that then dropped too far behind me and ended up flipping it as a result. So the more even weighting of the 115 Obans just helped me control the club face more. But other than that, just fancied a new set of toys, but the shafts made a big difference to my control. So moving on down to the bottom part of the full swing clubs, we have 3 very rusty, tired looking Vokey wedges, although they're not that old. These are actually SM8s and an SM9. I don't play a huge amount, so they don't get overly worn out. So I've got a 50 degree in the 08F, a 56 in the D, and a 60 in the M grind. So I get a little bit of shaft lean, a little bit steep. So I need, particularly in that 56 and 60, a little bit of bounce. So the D in particular gives me a steeper front half, which protects against the wetter turf. But then I need that back edge graduation because I do open it up. Similarly with the 60, that kind of wider sole, I want something that sits a little bit tighter, but I need the wider sole to give me, again, that little bit more bounce. But then the graduated back edge where, again, I do play bunker shots square, but forward and work the head underneath. And I do open up the sole on the shorter shots, so I will play shots fairly open to try and play kind of a shorter, softer shot. I've never played them that well on the course. Should maybe do one-handed wedges, who knew? But the Vokeys for me have been good for bounce because they give that slightly higher front half progression and then taper off the back edge. And I like the raw finish because they take all the glare off, and when you grind them, you can't see where they've been ground. The only thing I do with the shafts, I play the Oban in my 50 because I wanted to play like a shorter version of my pitch wedge. And then I got to a Modus 120 in the 56 and 60 to give me a bit more weight in the bottom of the shaft and a little bit heavier dead weight as well. So just from a timing point of view, just progress the weight up a little bit. And those have served me well. So those are the full swing clubs. I do have, as you can see with most of these, there are little bits of lead tape on the back of my iron. So I'm very, very sensitive to the head weight from a timing point of view. So I do need very, very small fine tunes of swing weight, kind of 0.1, 0.2 of a swing weight point per iron. So I'm not overly, it might seem odd doing what I do. I'm not that fussed about how they look. I want them to perform perfectly. So I don't mind having little bits of lead tape on the back. They probably need redoing, but functionally they mean that my timing is as clean and as natural as possible. So there are a lot of players, a lot of you out there would hate seeing that on the back of your clubs. A lot of the pros really couldn't care as long as they work. I'm kind of along those lines. But those little fine tunes just help me from a timing standpoint. It's the little, I say fine tunes is the right phrase for it, just to make sure that every club is performing as well as it can, and then it's just the soft bit on the end that has to deal with it from there. It's just technique from that point on. And then the final club in the bag, we have under a Golf de Chantilly head cover. Had a lovely couple of days in France a couple of years back. I've got a slightly customized Bettinardi. So this one is the Queen Bee 11. So it's a semi-mallet, it's a small mallet. So I've historically always played a bladed shaped putter head. But the short neck, this in particular, this is the real key for me. The short hosel there, that means that it has a bit of toe hang. So the reason for the toe hang is where that shaft intersects just inside of the center of the head, which creates that that toe droop, that toe drop. And for me, because I putt with a little bit of lead lag, I putt with a little bit of rotation open and closed. If I go face balanced and I lose that toe hang, I over rotate the face. I lose a bit of feel for the putter face. So my putting is has always been a little bit sort of hit and miss. When it's good, it's very good. I've understood a little bit more about my forearm rotation, so changed my grip recently, which has stabilised it. But in the same way, I'm not putting myself with Tiger here, but the same way Tiger's always had a bit of closure of the face through the ball, I do as well. If I don't have the toe hang, I find it hard to regulate that and to time it. So for me, the toe hang is a key thing. And then the other bit that I did on this was I actually painted out the white line on the back. So when I did a bit of testing with Mike Clark, who used to work with us, who's now Phil Kenyon's South of England putting coach, we worked out for me that a line towards the hole, my eyes see left of target. So for me, it's best to focus on the face. So when I had a nice bright white line there, I could see it clearly, but it actually took my eyes offline. So painted that out, and then last year had a much better year on the greens. So from an alignment point of view, it's better to not have any alignment for me rather than have a dominant one. So 34 inches and a standard, pretty standard. It's a better 91, but the lambkin, the sink fit, standard pistol shaped putter grip. Again, feels comfortable in my hands, lets me feel like I can use the weight of the toe to regulate timing back and forth. Too big, I lose feel. So 34 inch, 1.8 degree loft and 68 degree lie. So back into the irons, I'm pretty traditional on the lofts, 28.5, 29 on the 6 iron, but a little bit flatter than standard again. So a little bit longer than standard, 37.75 for the 6 iron length. So nothing extreme. Swing weight, D2.5, D2.7 on the 6 iron. So we do have that progressed through the set. It waves a little bit for me. It's not a fixed progression, but a lot of that is just the in-hand testing that I do with my own, where I can fiddle around and fine-tune them. But outside of that, nothing really. There's nothing overly exceptional about my clubs. I've always played with a ridge in the grip. Actually, that's probably the final thing, grip-wise. These, sadly, as a grip, are being discontinued. I finally found a grip I love, and they stopped making them. So these ones being the Calibrate, if I turn it round, it's got that raised bit in the back of the grip. So the same way that on Golf Pride they have the Align, Lamb can do the Calibrate. And so for me, I like to feel the grip into the kind of through the crook of the fingers and into that part of the hand. So the rib for me helps me set my hands on the club. It actually just fills out the crook of the fingers a little bit as well, feels a bit more stable, a bit more secure. And I go 3 extra tapes on the top hand, and this one's built up a little on the bottom hand as well, so it actually plays more like 5 or 6 in the bottom hand. So it's not quite a mid-size. I prefer a slightly bigger feeling grip to too small. I think I've always had a lot of rotation in my hands, so the bigger grip just feels a bit more stable, but less than a mid-size. So about two-thirds of the way to a mid-size in the top hand, and not a million miles of a mid-size in the bottom hand. And I keep that, and I keep the rib all the way into the wedges as well, which not everyone does, but I'm just comfortable with it. So those I have on all of my full swing clubs, and I've got the same material, the Sonar material, on my putter as well. I like the tread that's on them, so the pattern that's on them. It's got some tread and some grip to it without being hard and harsh. So a corded grip I find too harsh. So these have been a really good middle ground, but I'm going to have to find a new grip. I might just go to the wrap version of it because that's still being made. But sod's law, find a grip you like, let's stop making it. So that is my bag, and the previous iterations as well. So I don't change very often, not as often as everyone thinks I must change yearly, but actually I don't touch my clubs until I need to change them. So as long as my body stays the same and my technique stays, broadly speaking, the same, the clubs can stay the same as well. So I probably change, well, driver's been once in 7 years, irons is probably every 5-6 years. Again, I don't play overly often, so I'm not wearing them out too much. Wedges I'll change every couple of years, so they're probably due an upgrade. But outside of that, Pro V1, standard Pro V1 ball, we'll be testing the new TP5, but I've always been flitted between those two. We'll see if the TP5 can give me a little bit of ball speed and a little bit of height with my mid irons. But outside of that, decidedly ordinary. So that's my bag, and the previous iterations of it. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. It's really important to us that you like and subscribe. If you enjoyed watching the videos and the content and what we've produced, please let us know by subscribing and signing up. If you want to see more of it, you can always let us know what you want to see. We'll happily do as much as we can of the content that you would like. But equally speaking, if you're able to subscribe, that would be great, because that helps us drive forward, helps us get some influence, to get some bigger guests in, to get more content for you, to get it earlier than everyone else as well. So the more you can help us to do that, the more we can get you the great content as well. So thank you for watching, and look forward to seeing you soon.